That's enough out of you. A weekly podcast where you'll hear the truth, or at least a closer version of the truth than most of the bullshit that's out there. Here are your hosts, Bill Rader and Sean Kane.
Hello and welcome to That's Enough Out of You. I'm your host, Bill Rader.
And I'm Sean Kane.
And we are a weekly podcast where we talk about all kinds of stuff. We talk about sports. We talk about history. We talk about sports history. We talk
historical figures, Billy.
We talk historical figures. We talk music, movie, the mafia, real crime, true crime, all kinds of stuff. It's a fun show. We try to have some fun from time to time. We're gonna have a fun show today.
We talk about whatever we want, Billy, because it's our show, buddy.
Yes, it is. It is indeed. And so far, our show has been getting some pretty good feedback. We actually got another email. Sean, I could read this to you. This is from.
All right, buddy, let's have it.
Yeah, this is from Cousin Vinny. And Cousin Vinny says, great show here, or great show. He says, hey, Sean, Cousin Vinny here. May want to check out the movie Parkland, made in 2013 and produced by Tom Hanks, based on a book about events at the hospital by Vincent Bugli. How do you pronounce that? Bugliosi. Thank you. Sorry about that.
He's the guy that prosecuted Manson, Billy.
Okay. Powerful stuff. Keep up the good work, Vince.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks, Cousin Benny, there for the question. We appreciate any question, and I love the feedback. I actually have seen the movie Parkland, and I have actually painfully read the book by Vincent Bugliosi, which is actually like 1,300 pages, Bill, if you could believe that.
Wow.
But I don't want to sound like I'm attacking Vinny here, because this is a great question, and we appreciate any feedback. And you always got to be open to what other people are saying, what other people write about. You always got to leave yourself open, Bill, to learning new stuff. Like there's always declassified documents coming out.
Right.
But the truth is that both that movie and that book by Bugliosi have been absolutely destroyed by the declassified documents. I mean, let's start with the movie first, Bill. So Parkland was about the assassination, and it was produced by Tom Hanks. And now here's the problem, Bill. We get two guys from Archibald, like me and you, trying to go up against Tom Hanks, and it's like, it's hard to go up against that star power. And listen, Tom Hanks is a fantastic actor, not taking anything away from him. But anytime that Tom Hanks is producing a show on history or doing an interview talking about history, I get a knot in my stomach, Bill, because he distorts history more than any person I've ever seen in Hollywood. I mean, he actually, in one interview, Bill, he gave a quote that he said, the United States government has lost its credibility, so I'm going to give them some of my credibility. Now, that statement to me means that, why has the United States government lost its credibility? Well, lied about the assassinations of the 60s, lied about Watergate, lied about Vietnam, weapons of mass destruction. You know what I mean? It's like they lied so much they lost their credibility. So that comment tells me that, okay, so Hanks is going to tell their lies now, and it's going to be more believable because it's coming from a Hollywood star. You know what I'm saying, Billy?
Okay.
That's the way I take it. I mean, you got a different take on it?
No, I don't have a different take on it. It just seems kind of egotistical to me. I mean, I can't, I mean, Tom Hanks is a great actor. He is somebody who has been in many amazing films. He's won Academy Awards. He's had some of the best roles of anybody probably in the history of Hollywood. But to say that he's going to be the voice of truth, for the United States government, okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit out there,
Yeah.
especially, a government that's lost its credibility with what I just mentioned,
Right.
But anyway, let's get to the film, Bill, because first of all, it was a box office bomb. So I think me and Vinny might have been the only two people that watched it. It did not do good. Yeah, I mean, it just.
Honestly, I never even heard of it, Sean. I never heard.
Yeah,
heard of this movie.
I try to watch as much as I can. Even if it's got and it had the total slant bill towards the Warren Commission. You know what I mean? It was all pro Warren Commission, and of course Hanks is on record saying that he believes the Warren Commission. And then when he was asked, well, how much of it did you read? He said, well, I didn't read any of it. And that's an interesting statement. How could you be so, how could you approve of something that you never even read? But I guess that's the only way to approve of the Warren Commission, because if you actually read it, you realize it's a fairy tale.
Yeah.
But yeah, the movie, Bill, I mean, there were some scenes, I guess, that was pretty well, just very intense, like in the actual hospital at Parkland Hospital, where they were still trying to save the president's life and stuff. But the thing is, Bill, they didn't show the back of the head blowing out. They made that the shot came from the back. There was no front shot, and just all stuff that we now know is not true, because I mentioned before, there's like 40 some witnesses that were all, medical personnel that said the back of the head was blowing out. And you mentioned you could see that in the Zapruder film.
Of course, everybody could see that.
But if you really want to, talk about Hanks, like the person I mentioned before, an author, Jim Diogenio, did some great work. And he actually, Bill, he wrote a book that originally was called Reclaiming Parkland. Okay. And it was Oliver Stone who actually asked him to change the name on it. So he changed the name to JFK, The Evidence Today, because Oliver told Jim, he says, Jim, why would you name a book after a movie that nobody's seen? It doesn't make any sense. So, he changed the name, but Jim does a great job in that book. There's actually a whole chapter on Tom Hanks, and he really, goes after Hanks, how he distorts movies, because Parkland isn't the only one. He was also involved with the Post. I don't know if you've seen that movie, Bill, that was on the Pentagon Papers.
No, I didn't.
Well, the thing about that, I won't go into too much detail on that, but the Pentagon Papers, Bill, was basically the hero of the Pentagon Papers should have been Daniel Ellsberg. He was the NSA analyst that released or that gave out the information actually to the New York Times. He didn't even give it to the New York Post or to the Washington Post originally. So Hanks changed the whole thing. He calls it the Post. It was New York Times that he gave it to. But Daniel Ellsberg is the guy who, the Watergate plumbers were bugging his psychiatrist's office. He was under constant pressure. Nixon was really after him because he didn't want this released. And he's the hero of that story, but he's in the movie for literally like 10 minutes, Bill. And Hanks makes Katharine Graham of the Washington Post the hero. And the thing is, Katharine Graham supported the Vietnam War the entire time under Lyndon Johnson. In fact, Lyndon Johnson has a quote that he said that Katharine Graham was worth more to him than 2 battalion units in Vietnam, because he would send her articles from his people, Bill, that she would pretty much print verbatim of what Johnson wanted and put her name to it and saying how the war is going so good. So she supported the Vietnam War all through Johnson's presidency. And the only reason she turned is because of Richard Nixon. So to make her the hero of the story, Bill, is just, again, it's just Hanks changing the narrative, changing his view. And again, like he said, I'm going to give the U.S. government credibility. I'm going to give him my credibility.
Yeah, Sean, we'll have to do an episode on at least one episode on the Vietnam War. There's so much.
Oh, we do. And you know what, Bill?
Information.
There is so much information on Vietnam. We definitely got to do it. And we got to do an episode on Watergate, Bill.
Yeah.
Watergate,
absolutely.
so much stuff on Watergate. And it ties in, and there's such just tremendous. We could go down so many roads with Watergate. But, and just to finish, Vinny's question, Vince Bugliosi, he wrote this book on the Kennedy assassination that the movie Parkland was based on. And like I said, it was 1,200 pages, and it's all filler, Bill. Like, it's all general information. He wrote the book. He never left his house. Like, how could you write? He wrote it from his office. He wrote the whole book from his office. How do you write a book about the Kennedy assassination? You never go to Dealey Plaza. You never go to New Orleans. You never interviewed the people, that were interviewed in the Warren Commission or whatever. And the thing is, just to give you an example, he says, one of the things he says in the book is how, all you have to do is read the Warren Commission volume on Jack Ruby, and then you realize that there was no conspiracy. Well, I'm sorry, Vince Bugliosi, I did read that volume. And the thing is, Bill, I forget the number of the volume for the Warren Commission, but it's all on Jack Ruby. And it's like 700 and some pages. And half of it, Bill, if you could believe this, is on Jack Ruby's family dental records. And Jim Garrison found this, and he says, listen, he said, even if Ruby was accused of biting Oswald to death, his family dental records are not relevant to the investigation, right?
So why were they in there?
To fill up, Bill. They're filler, just to make it look like, hey, we have this 26 volumes, and look how thick they are. Like each volume is like, close to 1,000 pages. Some are over 1,000. So how could we be telling something that isn't true with all this information? Well, it's the same thing with Bugliosi's book. It's 1,300 pages. But the thing is, like half of the book is just like general information that has no relevance to the case. It's just filler. But who the heck is going to read, that many pages? Nobody wants to read a book that long. Like Alan Dulles said, Americans don't read. But Bugliosi, Bill, was there's a book by Tom O'Neill called Chaos, which is based on CIA's Operation Chaos, which was to attack left-wing groups in the United States. And it ties in the CIA to Charles Manson. It's a tremendous book, and we should actually do an episode of that sometime down the line. But O'Neill absolutely destroyed Bugliosi. It came out that Bugliosi was a wife beater. He planted evidence. He intimidated witnesses. He should have been disbarred. And actually, one of the worst stories that O'Neill found on Bugliosi was that you heard of the old expression, like the kid looks like the milkman. Well, in those days, they did have the milkman that went door to door. And Bugliosi was so obsessed that the milkman was having an affair with his wife, and that the milkman's kid was actually a product of the affair, that he harassed his family, Bill. And he was following the kids at school. I mean, what he put this family through was unbelievable. And O'Neill brings that out. So that tells you everything you want to know about Vince Bugliosi, and I'm familiar with him because going back to the O.J. Simpson trial, I used to watch at night how Geraldo Rivera had a show, and me and my dad used to watch that, and Bugliosi was on there. And I remember how he was so outraged about the domestic violence that O.J. was accused of and this and that. And here Bugliosi, he's such a hypocrite. He was just as bad, so I don't think anything that Bugliosi says could be taken literally. So, but to Vince's question, it's great to have this stuff. Like, we have to address this stuff, and it's important to just not ignore it, like, because both of those, that movie and the book pretty much go against everything that we've been saying on our podcast.
Right.
So it's important to address it,
And it's important to take, movies with a grain of salt, and
sure.
And, you have to discover, you have to do some research and some reading and to find out, hey, is this accurate, or is this kind of made up?
But Bill, let me ask you a question. Why wasn't that movie attacked? It was attacked by the critics because it was a bad movie, but it was never attacked for the accuracy of the movie. Where JFK by Oliver Stone, even the critics that attacked it said it was a very entertaining movie. They attacked it because they said it was not factual. But the truth is, JFK was a lot more realistic than The Post or the movie Parkland. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, we could go scene by scene if you want. I mean, it's just a fact. You can't deny it.
Yeah. And all of these movies have a certain amount of
well, sure,
liberties taken for dramatic
there's one
effect.
thing you take a liberty, Bill, but when you completely change history and you make somebody a hero that should have been a hero, or you take the hero out of the story completely, like you did with Daniel Ellsberg. I mean, that movie, The Post, I mean, that's like making the movie Jaws, Bill, and you have the poster, the great white shark, and it's coming up from the depths, going to attack the surfer. And then the great white shark is in the movie for 10 minutes, and the rest of the movie is about Orca the killer whale. It makes no sense. You know what I mean? I mean, Hank's just like, he just twists everything around, and just it's frustrating. But like you said, he's a great actor. You can't take that away from him. He's got a powerful name, and two guys from Archibald are trying to say that Tom Hanks is telling the people something that isn't true, and that's what we're up against, buddy.
Yeah.
So thanks for the question there, cousin Vinny, and keep them coming, buddy. Keep them coming.
Great question, and led to some good discussion. Yeah, so thank you.
Absolutely. I'm sorry they're a little long-winded answer, Bill, but I mean, that's such an important question that, you know, you can't answer that question in a minute.
Right. Yeah. All right. Good. Cool. So what we decided our topic would be today, Sean, is we're going to talk a little wrestling, a little squared circle today.
Let's do it,
professional
buddy. Let's
wrestling.
do it.
All right. So it's pro wrestling, something that we're both interested in. And interested in it. So at one point we were both obsessed with it. I don't know. Certainly not now.
No, not now, but in the 90s though, Bill, I remember me and you getting the pay-per-views.
Yeah.
Getting that box. Remember we used to go down and get the box and pay for the pay-per-view every month. Yeah.
We would, at that, I think it was late 90s. We were watching WCW, but
right. That was the heart of the NWO.
That's right. NWO versus WCW. And then, right. And then the WWF, which became WWE, started to come on in the later 90s, probably 98, 99. It started to sort of overtake the popularity of WCW. And of course it continues today, and WCW is a thing of the past, but that was the second, I would say, golden age of wrestling, the original golden age, I think, and maybe the one that certainly I always reminisce about and think about is the 80s. And Sean, I don't know when did you start following wrestling? When
it would have been probably around 1980, Bill. It was, my grandfather was a huge wrestling fan, and he took me down to Scranton CYC. And we went down there, and Andre the Giant was down there. He was the headliner.
Yeah.
And we were in the hallway when Andre came by, and I just remember, now I'm a little kid at the time, but I'm like 9 years old. My brother's like 5. We were there in the hallway, and Andre was just he is just massive, and he put his hand on my head, Bill, and I thought he was going to squash it like a grape. Like, he was just so massive. But yeah, I mean, that was really the first time. And then I used to, Saturdays, I always go to with my grandfather. We watch pro wrestling every Saturday morning. Yeah. But every time, I just remember so many times going down to CYC, he'd take us down there. I mean, he just loved it. And one of his favorite was Polish Power Ivan Putski. So every time he was down to CYC, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I think I can't remember which wrestling I started watching first, if it was WWF or NWA, but I started watching both of them probably around 83, 84. And I think I was more into the NWA than I was WWF. And I think mostly because WWF sort of around that time, 84, 85, really became more, I don't know, I guess cartoonish, right? You started seeing more, like Junkyard Dog and
right,
Santana. Yeah, I mean, not that those guys weren't entertaining. They were, but I guess I just enjoyed I don't know. I enjoyed sort of the more no-name type of the less flashy wrestlers.
And also, Bill, I think that was actually when they kind of changed from, there wasn't actually as much wrestling per se in those. It was more about entertainment. It was more about the drama. It was more about the mic skills. You know what I mean? And that's where, it kind of took away from the actual wrestling.
Well, it actually became that's when they brought in rock and wrestling, right? They started bringing in mainstream celebrities, Cyndi
It was like a
Lauper.
soap opera. It became like a soap opera.
Well, I think it was
For
always a
guys.
soap opera, but I think that at that point the WWF was trying to reach a mainstream audience. They were trying to compete with
And they
the
did.
larger, absolutely did. And I think it did a couple of things. It certainly brought in more of an audience. It made it more family friendly, where you could now take your kids to see these wrestlers, and it was fun. You could watch it on television, and there were these larger than life characters. And of course, that, in my opinion, culminated with the 1987 WrestleMania 3, which was in the Pontiac Silverdome. I'm sure you remember that one, Sean.
Sure, I was there. Actually, I remember going with my grandfather down to CYC. They had it at the big screen.
I was there too. Yeah, I was there.
Hulk Hogan against Andre the Giant. Yeah,
that's right. We watched it on closed circuit, and I remember specifically what may be considered the greatest match of all time, maybe to this day, which was Randy Savage against Ricky Steamboat. And I don't know, Sean, who you were rooting for, but I was rooting for Randy Savage. I think I may have been the only one in the building.
No, I was rooting for him too, Billy. He was always a favorite of mine.
Yeah,
I always like the heels more. I always rooted for the bad guys.
Too. Yeah, me too for sure. But that was such an amazing match.
Great match.
And I've seen a lot of documentaries about Savage, especially since Savage has passed away. I've seen some documentaries about him and how absolutely meticulous he was with that match. Steamboat has talked about it, where I think Savage filled up something like 3 legal size notepads, and literally line by line every single move, and made Steamboat memorize it. And he would, he'd call Steamboat up and he'd say, Ricky, okay, man, what are we doing next? What comes after the leg drop? What comes after the fling into the ropes? And Steamboat, would say, Randy, take it easy, man. We got plenty of, we'll do it. And he said, Savage was just so meticulous about it, and just wanted it to be perfect, even though he was loose. He knew he was going to lose the match. He just wanted it to be the best. And I remember, never forget that match. It was so exciting.
That was a pretty good impersonation there, Bill, Macho Man. But yeah, that was a great match, buddy. And of course, that era, Hulk Hogan became a star, and he's the one that, he really brought wrestling into, the mainstream, I think.
Yeah. Well, Hogan had already been a star for a couple of years. I think it was kind of a.
Well, the Rocky 3, he was in Rocky 3.
Right. And that really brought him into the mainstream. But then when he, when he and McMahon got together and built, came up with Hulkamania, and it really, starting with WrestleMania 1, which was in 1984, where they brought in Mr. T and they had Rowdy Piper and
Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful.
Mr. Wonderful, right? If you remember that feud, Hogan and Orndorff, and then Hogan versus King Kong Bundy, that was WrestleMania 2 in a steel cage.
And Piper was so great. I mean, Piper was just awesome.
Piper was a perfect heel for that time. Absolutely perfect heel. And it was sort of a ceremonial passing of the torch, because Andre had always been the big star. He had always been the big baby face in the WWF. And when he knew things were coming to an end for him as far as his wrestling career, he just wasn't able to keep up the schedule. He wasn't able to do the things he used to be able to do when he was younger and felt better. He knew it was time to pass it on to this, Hulk Hogan, and he agreed to do it. And from everything I've seen and read about with that match, Hogan wasn't 100% sure until the very end that he was going over that night, that he was going to win. And
no, he was worried. He was really worried that Andre wasn't going to, lay down for him and take the defeat.
Yeah. And at some point during the match, Andre said, this is it, kid. And Hogan knew it was time. He body slammed him, which no one had done before. and gave him the famous leg drop.
Right.
And that was it. Covered him for the 1, 2, 3. And yeah.
Just a great match, Bill. That was just, great. That whole event was just awesome.
It really was, start to finish. You really got your money's worth no matter what, whether you were there in person or watching it on closed circuit or whatever.
Right.
So it was great. I remember I went with my dad to see that one. Many of those closed circuit events at the CYC, I went with my dad. I'll never forget going to see Mike Tyson and who was it? Spinks, Michael Spinks. Remember that was supposed to be the match of the century.
Yeah.
It ended up going 93 seconds.
Yeah, not too many people lasted too long with Tyson back then.
No, that was his heyday for sure. Yeah, but wrestling was top of my list. I had a subscription to Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I was really
me too.
I was watching every week. So I'd watch Saturday nights. I'd watch the NWA.
Me too.
Saturday Night World Championship Wrestling, of course, Ric Flair and
he
the
was
Road
tremendous.
Warriors, Dusty Rhodes,
right?
Horseman, Nikita Koloff, all of those guys. I mean, that was
Lex Luger.
Wyndham,
yeah. I mean, yeah, the old NWA was great. And then somewhere in the 90s, Bill, I kind of got away from wrestling for a little bit. And it was the NWO that brought me back,
Yeah. Yeah, same with me. I got away from it, I think, probably early, maybe 92, 93. I stopped watching it on a regular basis. But I would see every now and then. I saw that, when Hulk Hogan was, skipped from WWF to WCW, I think there was some time in between where he was on television shows and stuff like that. But then he signed with WCW. So, of course, I noticed that, but wasn't really watching on a regular basis. And then you guys kind of got me back into it when you started telling me how great it was. And I started watching again, and it was a lot of fun. And it was, with the NWO, those guys were they were a rare kind of combination of heel and cool.
Right.
And I think that's where, if WCW made a mistake, it was making those guys as cool as they were, because
well, the thing is, and you're talking about Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. I mean, those guys, the outsiders, they were just tremendous. And you're right.
Yeah.
They try to make them bad. Like no matter what they would do, the people would there'd still be a following there. The people that just loved them no matter what they did. And that's where the problem was. I think you're right. And then, of course, they broke the NWO up in two groups, and then that's when it kind of got a little bit silly. But Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, they were my favorites. I mean, I had to tune in to see, they were just so good with the mic and just the stuff they did. I mean, do you remember the stuff that Nash would always mention the Kennedy assassination? Remember when they're taking him out in cuffs, and he'd be like, I'm a patsy like Lee Harvey Oswald. Right. And I said, and then he'd say, I hope Ruby's not waiting in the back and stuff like that.
Yeah, those guys. And I don't know about you, Sean. I do remember seeing the Nitro where those guys appeared for the first time, or at least where Scott Hall appeared for the first time. And I think there was, I forget who the announcer was. It may have been Eric Bischoff, but he said, what are you doing here? You don't work here. And not really being what they call smart to the business at that point, I kind of believed it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Well, it was really well acted, it looked like, that guys from the WWF were coming down and trying to take over.
Yeah, that's what it looked like.
And Bill, that's where I think, go ahead, Bill.
No, you go ahead first.
Well, I think that's another thing where they made a mistake there, where I think they let in too many people. Like the NWO should have been all ex-WWF guys. It should have been guys that were just stars in the WWF that came down. And when they start letting other guys in, like the Giant had like 2 stints in the NWO, and he really made his name in WCW. So it was just like, they started to let too many guys in, and I think they should have just kept it to a small group,
Yeah, I agree with that. And they also they really should have made it so that you hated those guys more and you loved the WCW guys, because it's just, when you have a situation where you're trying to, you're trying to get the fans to root for one side and they see right through it.
Well, I think the problem, Bill, I think they try to do that, but I think like Holland Nash, no matter what they would do, they would hit guys with baseball bats and spray paint NWO on their back, and people would cheer them.
Right.
No matter what bad thing they did, the people just loved them because they, like you said, they were just too cool. They were great with the mic, and they were just a must see. Like, Hogan, when Hogan turned, that was huge. When he turned, but for me, it was always, I wanted to tune in to Holland Nash. I mean, those guys were tremendous.
And the WWF kind of took advantage of that. They saw, hey, the crowds are cheering for the anti-hero now. They don't want the guy who preaches to say your prayers and take your vitamins, and they want the guy who's going to give you the finger and who's going to drink beer. And
that's when Stone Cold Steve Austin kind of came in his own.
And yeah, absolutely. The other thing for me, Sean, that changed and really got me involved with it was when you could start reading about the behind the scenes things happening on the internet, because in the 80s we didn't have that. I had Pro Wrestling Illustrated, which, Pro Wrestling Illustrated is as fake as wrestling is, right? It's
right.
as scripted as wrestling. So you weren't really getting any inside information, but with the websites, I think Dave Meltzer was one of them, and there were a bunch of them that where you could log in and you could see, hey, this guy's in the building tonight, which means he's going to be on the show, or this guy's leaving the WWE and or WWF or WCW, whatever it was, and he's going to jump ship. And then you also had the ECW guys, which was Extreme Championship Wrestling. That brought a whole new spin on it, where it was, and I went to a couple of those ECW shows live. What'd you think, Sean, when you went to those shows?
Oh, they were great. I mean, Raven was tremendous, and Saturn, and those guys were just great. I mean, it was extreme. It was really, it was different.
Yeah, it was all of a sudden chairs. If you hit a guy with a chair, you didn't get disqualified. It was part of the show.
Part of the show, yeah.
There was swearing. It was X-rated wrestling is what it was, and it was perfect for guys in their in their 20s who had kind of grown up with it in the 80s and had seen all the cartoonish characters, and now we're ready for something a little bit more adult, and that's exactly what ECW was.
And Bill, the one thing we got to say, like, even though we know it's scripted and we know it's fake, these guys are like stuntmen. I mean, they're like the stuff they do is very dangerous, and so many times they get hurt, and it's not like there's an off season where they could rest up like football. I mean, this is 365 days. I mean, they're putting their body through a grind. They're on the road all the time. You get hooked on painkillers. I mean, there was a lot of things, that just, it's a tough life, to be honest with you.
And that was one of the things that kind of drove the guaranteed contracts, because most of them, if they didn't perform, they didn't get paid.
Right.
And so if you were hurt, and you knew the only way you're going to be able to perform is if you started going on painkillers, and then you had guys getting hooked on painkillers. And we saw so many wrestlers, one after another die.
Yeah.
From drug overdoses, young guys who just, such a shame. I mean, the list is incredible. If you look at the list of these guys who died before the age of 30 or before the age of 35, just terrible. But so then they started, because there's no union. I think at one point, forget who it was. I think it was Jesse Ventura who tried to unionize wrestling.
It was him.
In the 80s or 90s, and Hogan opposed him, right? Hogan kind of rallied the guys and said, no, you don't want a union. But if they had a union, at least they would have gotten benefits. They would have been able to heal when they were hurt without worrying about not getting paid. But
there's no
so that
question
really
it takes a toll on you, Bill. I mean, there's no question of what that does to your body. I mean, you're getting slammed, even when they're hitting each other with chairs, and all it takes is one wrong move, or,
Yeah.
you know, a wrestler where he's not really that good and he could really hurt you, you know?
Well,
And
yeah, and that happened many times. It happened with Goldberg.
right.
Goldberg hurt a lot of guys, and not, certainly not intentionally, but he didn't have enough experience. They rushed him along so quick. He just didn't have enough ring experience. And I know Bret Hart has always said Goldberg ended my career because he kicked me so hard. I thought my head was going to come off of my body. And that's not what these guys are trained to do. They're trained to make it look like they kick that hard, and they're going to land, and you're going to hear the noise, but it really shouldn't hurt as badly as it did.
I mean, one of the guys, Bill, that took a beating is Mick Foley. I mean, that match, the Hell in the Cell match with the Undertaker. I mean, that was just incredible. What a beating though he really took. I mean, what he put his body through.
Yeah, and the head injuries. With what we know today about concussions, these guys were wrestling. They may have gotten a concussion the night before. They were back at it the next night.
Right.
And yeah, just, I don't know, crazy.
Well, did you ever hear the behind the scenes story, Bill, with the Undertaker and Mick Foley with the thumbtacks?
What, where he had the bag of thumbtacks and
yeah, and the Undertaker kept like slamming him on the thumbtacks, and then afterwards, when they were back in the locker room, Undertaker says to him, are you okay? Because remember, I think Foley went right through the cage, and I think his bottom tooth went right through his tongue. And
it went through his nose.
Was that what it was? Wow, he was a mess.
Yeah.
And then the Foley was like out of it, and he says to the Undertaker, he says, "What did we end up doing with those thumbtacks? Did we ever use them?" And the Undertaker said, "They're all in your back."
Yeah.
He didn't even remember. He was shot. But yeah, this craziness.
And a lot of people would look at that and say, "What are these maniacs doing?" But the rabid wrestling fans, we couldn't get enough of it.
And of course, they would cut themselves with razor blades, a lot of times to make the blood real.
Right. Well, that happened. That had been happening for many years.
Yes.
In fact, I think one of the most famous feuds in wrestling, that it's one of those old school feuds that probably the younger wrestling fans had never heard about, but Bruiser Brody and Abdullah the Butcher. I don't know if you remember that, Sean.
I do. Those guys were crazy. I mean, Abdullah the Butcher, Bill, he had his forehead was just completely scarred from all the times he cut his forehead open, a
lot of those guys were, if you you think about, I mean, you're literally taking a razor blade and slicing open your forehead. And Abdullah the Butcher it was bald. He didn't have any hair, but he would, night after night, he would take a razor blade, and when the crowd's not looking, when you're laying down or whatever, you take it out of your wristband and you nick your forehead so that blood comes out. But he was doing this night after night after night. And him and Bruiser Brody, these are two guys who just would beat each other senseless every single night. And it was one of the great feuds of all time. I can't remember how many times it won feud of the year and those awards, but
yeah. And then another one was Jimmy the Superfly Snuka, Bill. Remember when Ray the Crippler Stevens pile drived him on the concrete floor, and he was bleeding, and then they put the big X's, the red X in the box in front of the screen. Do you remember that on the TV?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course, one of the best matches I remember is Jimmy Snuka and Magnificent Morocco in the steel cage.
In Madison Square Garden. Yeah, that was of course famous because Snuka did the he gave him the jumped off the top, top of the cage with the Superfly. Yeah, that was crazy.
Well, the thing is, Bill, I mean, what's that? That's a 15-foot cage, right?
Right.
So he's up there like 20 feet in the air.
I mean, his head was in the lights.
Yeah.
And jumped down. And then you had all the weird kind of matches where they were novelty matches, like those scaffold matches
Yeah.
with the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express, and then you had the what was it called? The two rings side by side with the cage around it. I forgot. War Games.
Oh,
That's what it
War
was
Games.
called.
Yeah. Yeah, that was awesome.
Where it was 5 on, it was 5 against
Right.
5. That was pretty crazy. You had battle royals. What's the battle royal you remember the most?
Oh, I don't know. There's so many, Bill. There's so many. I don't know. What was your favorite? There was just so many of them.
Well, I remember. I mean, there was, the one in WrestleMania 2. I think that Andre the Giant won.
Right.
There was one. I think that came after WrestleMania 3, where Hercules won. If you remember Hercules Hernandez, who became Hercules. Yeah, a lot of great battle royals, and then that turned into the Royal Rumble.
Right.
Yeah, just so many great matches over the years. You have a favorite match, Sean?
You know what? I think I would have to go with Jimmy Snuka and Magnificent Morocco in that cage. Yeah. I think that's one of my favorite. I think another one I really liked was Kevin Nash against Goldberg. And that's when Kevin Nash, when they split the NWO in two, and we were watching this on a pay-per-view, me and my brother. And right. We didn't know that the NWO was secretly getting back together. And Scott Hall came out and he hit Goldberg with a taser. Didn't he? He was dressed as a security guard.
That's right.
A cattle prod? Was it lecture? What did he hit him with? Or was it a taser?
I think it was a cattle prod. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And then, of course, the next night, Nash would give the belt up to Hogan, and the NWO would be back together.
Right.
But I think that was a great match because that was Goldberg's first loss.
I remember that. That was a great match.
There's just so many, Bill. I mean, Ric Flair had so many great matches.
I was going to say, Ric Flair was probably my favorite wrestler of all time. And he had some classics. Just, going back to his matches in the early 80s with Dusty Rhodes, Harley Race. He had some classics with Sting. There was that one on the first Clash of the Champions that went the 45-minute time limit, which ended up, of course, with Ric Flair in the Scorpion Deathlock, and the time expired, and everybody thought Sting had won.
Right.
That was a good match. And then he had great matches with Ricky Steamboat. I mean, some classics with Ricky Steamboat. There was a 2 out of 3 falls match that was amazing. Yeah, Flair was just, and
another great one, Bill, was Bret Hart against Stone Cold, when they went into the match where Stone Cold was actually the heel and Bret Hart was the good guy. Remember, and they kind of turned roles. They switched roles during the match because the people were actually starting to cheer for Stone Cold.
Right. Yeah, that was the double turn. There were a few of those I remember. I think there was one with Flair and Hogan where Flair went in as the good guy and Hogan went in as the bad guy, and they started cheering for Hogan halfway through it. I don't know if you remember that one.
I remember, yeah. And of course, The Rock, Bill, when The Rock first came out, remember he was not popular at all. Remember, the people just didn't like him. And then when he had that first, he came out as Rocky Maivia.
Yeah, well, Rocky sucks was the big chant, right?
Yep. And then once he turned and he started saying all these crazy things with the mic, I mean, it was just, he became really popular.
Yeah, I think for me, the one that stands out the most is when Chris Jericho made his WWE or WWF debut, and he did it right in the middle of The Rock doing an in-ring promo, and then Rock kind of went on to tear him down.
I remember that. Yeah.
Class.
But there's so many great ones, bro. I mean, we could go on forever.
Yeah.
We'll have to do another show on wrestling.
Oh, we'll do more shows on wrestling. Hey, Sean, how I found some pretty good trivia questions online. You up for a wrestling trivia?
Yeah, hit me with it, buddy. I'm a little rusty. I haven't been watching. Once in a while I'll go on YouTube and watch some old matches. But yeah, hit me with them, buddy. See what I remember.
Yeah, these seem like they're fairly simple ones. They're from so it's WWF 1980s.
Okay.
All right. There's 15 of them. So let's see how you do. Let's see how you do.
Okay.
So the question one is okay, here we go. Before the Honky Tonk Man, of course we all remember him.
Yep.
Who held the record for the longest reign as Intercontinental Champion? I'll give you the choices here. It's either
Okay.
Tito Santana, Don Morocco, Randy Savage, or Pedro Morales. I think I know this one.
I want to say Morocco, Bill. Was it Morocco or was it Morales? I think Morocco. I'm gonna go with Morocco.
Okay, I think it's Morales. You want to go Morocco? Let's go Morocco. And let's see. What do I do? Hit enter?
It's probably Morales.
I have to wait until we're done with these to get the answer. All right, so you're going with Morocco. All right, number two, and then we'll go back and we'll tell you the answers when we're done. All right, number two. This is an easy one. Who was the Rick Derringer song "Real American" written for? I probably don't even have to
Hogan.
give you the choices.
Yeah.
All right, Hogan. That's an easy one. This one I'm not sure about. Who managed the Glamour Girls? I don't remember the Glamour Girls. Was it Jimmy Hart, Captain Lou, Fabulous Moolah, or Joyce Grable?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to give a guess, Bill. I'm going to say Jimmy Mouth of the South Heart, but that's
Jimmy
just
Hart.
a guess.
Yeah, I have no idea on that one, so I'll go with you on that one. This one's pretty easy. What venue hosted WrestleMania 4 and 5? Is it Madison Square Garden, Trump Plaza, Los Angeles Sports Arena, or Skydome?
I forget, to be honest with you, but I remember Detroit was WrestleMania 3, but I don't remember. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. I remember. It was Trump Plaza.
Okay.
So we'll go with Trump Plaza. All right, number 5. Who was mistakenly awarded the WWF World Heavyweight Championship after losing to Bob Backlund? This one I don't remember. Antonio Inoki, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Tony Atlas, or Dominic DeNucci?
What was that? What was the choice after Inoki?
Greg the Hammer Valentine.
I'm going to go with the Hammer.
Okay. I don't know on that one, honestly. I'd never heard that before. I never heard that. I'm sure there's a story behind it. Never heard it before. So I'll go with you. All right. Number 6. Why did Macho Man Randy Savage almost back out of his match with Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 5? He had blood poisoning. He wanted more money. His mother passed away. He was unhappy with the scripted ending.
I don't know. I thought he was injured, Bill. I don't know. I honestly don't know. Do you know?
I don't know. You want to go with, well, the closest one to that is he had blood poisoning. You want to try that?
I don't think it was that. I was thinking like a back injury. So maybe I just say maybe because he didn't like the script.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Because I know he had some problems there where I remember there was times where he, went against management and stuff. But these are a lot tougher, Bill, than I thought they were going to be.
Yeah, me too. I didn't realize that with the first couple, they seemed pretty easy. All right. So this one, number 7, who offered the Iron Sheik $500 to break Hulk Hogan's leg? Was it Antonio Inoki, Bob Backlund, Vern Gagne, or Jesse the Body Ventura?
Was it Ventura?
I think so. That's who I would say.
I know he always hated Hogan.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think he was acting there either.
No, I don't know. He definitely. All right. Number 8. Who teamed with Pedro Morales to win the WWF Tag Team Championship in 1980? Was it Rene Goulet, Ivan Putski, Bob Backlund, or Wahoo McDaniel?
I think it was Putski.
I think so too.
Yeah.
All right. In 1987, what future superstar was picked from the audience to kiss Ted DiBiase's foot for $100? Was it Randy Orton, Sheamus, Santino Marella, or Rob Van Dam?
I don't remember that.
I don't either.
Who was after Orton? Who was the second choice?
Sheamus.
Yeah, those guys seemed like they were way down the road, though. I don't know. Let's just go with Sheamus.
All right.
I don't think that's right, but
they must have been kids.
yeah, they had to all be young.
Yeah. Okay. This is an easy one. What notable 80s jobber is Macho Man Randy Savage's real life brother?
Oh, Lenny Poffo.
Yeah, Lenny Poffo. That's an obvious one. All right. Which 80s superstar once played in the Canadian Football League? I know this one. So Dino Bravo is the first choice. Butch Reed, Mike Rotundo, or Tito Santana.
Is it Bravo?
I think it's Bravo. Although it might be Butch Reed.
Well,
I know Bravo is Canadian.
Right, but didn't Bravo also get whacked by the mafia?
I know he got murdered. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure, but we'll have to look into that. But I think he got involved with the Roselli family up in Canada, the Sicilian mafia, and I think he was doing something, and I think he ended up getting whacked. We'll look into that, but I'm pretty sure I remember reading about that.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's Butch Reed though. I don't know if you still want to go with Dino Bravo.
Yeah, we'll take your word on it, buddy. We'll go with Reed.
All right. We're almost to the end of these. So this is the match I was talking about before. Who did Andre the Giant eliminate to win the Battle Royal at WrestleMania 2? Golden Boy Danny Spivey, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Bret the Hitman Hart, or Big John Studd?
I think it was Studd, wasn't it?
I think so. All right. Who replaced Elizabeth as Macho Man Randy Savage's manager? Was it Oliver Humperdinck, Slick, Sherry Martel, or Jimmy Hart?
It was Sherry Martel, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. All right. 14. What famous match is known as the original screw job? Was it the Hart Foundation versus the British Bulldogs? Hulk Hogan versus Hercules Hernandez? Wendy Richter versus the Spider Lady, or the Fabulous Moolah versus sensational Sherry Martel?
I think the last one with Moolah and Martel, I think.
Okay. I know the Hart Foundation versus the British Bulldogs. If you remember that one, that's where the referee, Danny Davis, essentially was just, he was part of the Hart Foundation, but he was still the referee for that match.
Right.
So I know that was a screw. I don't know if they ever called it the original screw job, but all right, we'll go with Moolah and Sherry Martel. And then the last one is, who lost the first match in WrestleMania history? The Executioner, David Sammartino, Matt Bourne, or SD Jones?
I think it was SD Jones lost to King Kong Bundy, I believe, Bill, in like 9 seconds.
I think you're right. I remember that. All right, so here we go. Submit the answers. All right, so answer number 1. Question was, before Honky Tonk Man, who held the record for longest reign as Intercontinental Champion? You said Morocco. The answer was Pedro Morales. So I think I was right on that one.
Yeah, you were right.
This is surprising. So Rick Derringer wrote the song Real American. It was not originally written for Hulk Hogan. It was originally written for the U.S. Express.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you remember at that time, Hogan's entrance theme was Eye of the Tiger.
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So we're both wrong on that. All right. Who managed the Glamour Girls? You said Jimmy Hart. You were right. What venue hosted WrestleMania 4 and 5? It was the Trump Plaza. Who was mistakenly awarded the WWF Championship after losing to Bob Backlund? You were right. Greg the Hammer Valentine.
All right.
Why did Macho Man Savage almost back out of his match with Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 5? Let's see. You said he was unhappy with the scripted ending. The correct answer was he had blood poisoning.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, interesting. Who offered the Iron Sheik $500 to break Hulk Hogan's leg? We both said Jesse Ventura. It actually was Vern Gagne.
Wow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
All right. Who teamed with Pedro Morales to win the WWF Tag Team Championship in 1980? We both said Ivan Putski. The answer was Bob Backlund.
Wow.
So I think Backlund had both titles at once.
Okay.
During that, All right. In 1987, what future superstar was picked from the audience to kiss Ted DiBiase's foot for $100? You said Sheamus. The answer was actually Rob Van Dam.
Wow.
He was 12 years old.
Not a good score we're going to have there, Billy.
No. These are tough questions. I didn't realize they were going to be this tough. Okay, so what notable 80s jobber is Macho Man's real life brother? We both said Leapin' Lanny Poffo, which is right. Of course, Randy Savage's real name is Randy Poffo. And their father was Angelo Poffo, who was a wrestler.
Right.
All right. Which 80s superstar once played in the Canadian Football League? This was my answer. Butch Reed. It was actually Tito Santana.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Who did Andre the Giant eliminate to win the Battle Royal at WrestleMania 2? We said Big John Studd. The answer is Bret the Hitman Hart.
Wow.
Who replaced Elizabeth as Macho Man's manager? We both said Sherry Martel. That was right. What famous match is known as the original screw job? We said Fabulous Moolah versus Sensational Sherry. The answer is Wendy Richter versus the Spider Lady.
Wow.
Yeah, I had no idea that one. And then the last one, who lost the first match in WrestleMania history? We said SD Jones was actually the Executioner. He was defeated by Tito Santana.
Wow. But I'm pretty sure, though, SD Jones did lose to King Kong Bundy in WrestleMania 1. It just wasn't the first match.
It wasn't the first match.
Wow.
So we only we did terrible. 5 out of 15. Sean. We got to get better. We got to bone up on our WWF history here.
Well, I bet my buddy Hopkins is listening. He's probably going to get 15 out of 15, Bill. He's a big time wrestling fan.
Yeah.
He'll probably
you got to dig deep into the history books to get the answers to those.
Yeah, they were tough, buddy. They were tough.
Yeah. Next time we'll do it. We'll do an easier one. All right, John. I think we've done enough wrestling talk for one night.
This is good, buddy. We'll have to get back into it. I'll probably end up watching some YouTube videos later and old wrestling matches.
Yeah, just go on Peacock. They get the whole every WWF, WCW, NWA, whatever, every match from every AWA, world class, all that stuff is on Peacock now.
All right, buddy.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening to us go on about professional wrestling. We enjoyed it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let us know. Look us up on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. Go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Give us a good rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And also take note that our shows come out on YouTube a day before they come out for the podcast app. So if you are sitting around desperately waiting for the next That's Enough Out of You to come out, go to YouTube because we'll be there the day before. So if you have a question for us or comment or feedback, you can email us. That's enough out of you show@gmail.com. All right, Sean.
Buddy.
Take it easy, man. Have a good night.
Okay, buddy. Good night, everybody.
All right. That's enough out of you.